Welcome to This Explainer. Let's just jump right in. Look, today we're not talking about some dusty, unapproachable piece of history. We are unpacking the foundational text of Western literature, Homer's Iliad. And to really get this, you gotta realize the sheer scale of the epic we're dealing with. We're talking about a legendary conflict involving massive armies, a 10-year siege, and the eventual fall of a great ancient city. Yet with all of that going on, Homer chooses to zoom all the way in on something much more relatable, a high-stakes, utterly devastating workplace dispute between an arrogant king and his absolute top performer. Right out of the gate, Homer drops this incredible opening line, "Sing, goddess, of the anger of Achilles." And that tells us exactly what this story is about. You'd think this entire epic, with its 10-year war and thousands of casualties, would be driven by grand geopolitics or military strategy, right? Nope. It is entirely driven by the devastating consequences of one single man's wrath. Okay, let's dive into this. The Greeks called this specific type of wrath Manus. Now, this isn't just a bad mood or your typical argument. It is a cosmic, uncontrollable, utterly devastating rage. In ancient Greek literature, this specific word was almost exclusively reserved for the wrath of the gods, so to apply it to a mortal like Achilles is absolutely shocking. It elevates his anger to something profound. And as we'll see today, this specific psychological theme is the engine that drives the entire conflict, sending brave souls to Hades simply because of wounded pride. Section 1. The Spark of Wrath. We're going to track a literal domino effect today, starting with the initial spark that ignited a catastrophic chain of events for the whole Greek army. Get this, we are already 9 years into the siege of Troy. Try to imagine the sheer exhaustion, the depleted morale, the absolute dirt and grime of a 9-year military campaign far away from home. As the tension mounts in this pressure cooker, we're going to see 9 days of a devastating plague, an explosive assembly on the 10th day, and a really tense 12-day wait for the king of the gods. This brilliantly grounds our mythic story in a very specific ticking clock chronology. And the crisis, it starts at the very top. A priest of Apollo named Briseis comes to the Greek camp offering a huge, generous ransom for his captive daughter, Briseis. But the Greek commander, Agamemnon, acts exactly like a supremely arrogant CEO. Instead of accepting the ransom and respecting the god, he harshly turns the priest away, threatening him, basically just to flex his absolute authority. Agamemnon isn't just being a bad boss here, he's committing a massive cultural taboo. In the ancient world, you absolutely do not disrespect a priest, especially one carrying the sacred emblems of a major god like Apollo. It's an act of supreme hubris. Which brings us to Section 2, Plague and Prophecy. Imagine the sheer, utter panic spreading through the Greek camp. The grieving priest prays for revenge, and Apollo definitely hears him. The god descends from Olympus in absolute anger, his silver bow literally rattling as he moves. He unleashes a plague, striking down the mules and dogs first, then turning his arrows on the soldiers themselves. The visceral horror of this moment just cannot be overstated. For 9 continuous days, the acrid smoke of funeral pyres chokes the air across the beach, burning day and night as the death toll just keeps mounting. Finally, on the 10th day, Achilles calls an assembly, and the prophet Calchas reveals the hard truth. This plague is a direct punishment for Agamemnon's actions. He points the finger squarely at the boss. So now, Agamemnon is backed into a corner. He reluctantly agrees to return Croesus to stop the plague, but notice the extreme fragility of the king's ego here. He'll do the right thing to save the army, sure, but he absolutely refuses to lose face or status in front of his troops. So he instantly demands another commander's prize as compensation for his loss. To really understand why he feels so threatened, we have to look at ancient warrior culture. These prizes aren't just material wealth. They are the physical manifestation of honor and authority, known as time. For the supreme commander to lose his prize means losing tangible status in front of the very men he leads. Section 3. The Clash of Egos. Now, what's really interesting here is that when we weigh these two perspectives against each other, we see a complete breakdown in values. This is the ultimate showdown between the boss who demands respect for his title and the rockstar employee who demands respect for his results. On one side, you have Agamemnon, who feels entirely entitled to spoils simply because of his supreme authority. On the other side, Achilles argues he bears the heaviest burden of combat, takes the greatest risks, and yet he personally has zero quarrel with the Trojans. He is only fighting out of loyalty, and he rightly points out there are literally no communal prizes left to just hand over. The argument quickly becomes unbelievably toxic. Agamemnon threatens to seize a prize from one of the other commanders just to prove his power, specifically threatening to take Briseis, the captive woman awarded to Achilles. Achilles is just overcome with rage and humiliation. His hand reaches for his sword. He actually considers drawing his weapon right in the middle of the assembly. Will Achilles strike down the king? Enter the ultimate crisis manager. Just as he hesitates, the goddess Athena drops in from Olympus. This is one of the most famous physical interactions between a god and a mortal in all of literature. Athena, totally invisible to the rest of the camp, literally grabs the greatest warrior alive by his golden hair, pulling him back from the brink of treason. She promises him that if he restrains his anger and sheathes his sword right now, he will one day receive threefold gifts for this exact insult. Persuaded by the goddess, Achilles does sheath his weapon. But he definitely doesn't stay quiet. He absolutely unleashes on Agamemnon verbally. He calls the supreme commander, quote, a shameless, wine-soaked coward with the heart of a deer. I mean, wow. He publicly calls out Agamemnon's greed and total lack of courage, noting he never even arms himself for battle alongside the troops he commands. Think about how absolutely shocking it was for an underling to speak this way to a supreme commander in front of the entire assembled army. This isn't just an insult, it is the complete collapse of military discipline and mutual respect. Section 4. The Bitter Strike. Achilles follows his verbal assault with a solemn oath on his scepter. He swears that the Greeks will one day desperately need him, and when they do, he will refuse to fight. The wise old King Nestor steps in and makes this heartfelt diplomatic plea for peace, but he completely fails. Neither man is willing to back down. So, Agamemnon crosses the line. He sends his heralds, who, reluctantly and fearfully, seize Briseis from Achilles' camp. Achilles treats the heralds with courtesy, knowing they're just following orders, but in response to the king, he formally withdraws himself and his fierce troops, the Myrmidons, from the war. The Myrmidons were the absolute elite shock troops of the Greek forces. Losing them meant almost certain doom for the Greeks. So the crucial point is this stark contrast. The most unstoppable warrior in the world walks alone to the seashore and just breaks down in tears. Grieving his lost honor, he calls upon his divine mother, the sea nymph Thetis. He asks her to go to Zeus and beg him to let the Greeks be pushed back and slaughtered, just so Agamemnon is forced to realize his colossal mistake. But you really have to understand the emotional weight of this request. This isn't just a simple withdrawal from combat. It is active sabotage. He's asking for his own allies, his brothers in arms, to be slaughtered. Moving on to Section 5. Drama on Mount Olympus. This brings us to a fascinating tonal shift in the narrative, moving from mortal devastation down below to what almost feels like a divine sitcom up above. Thetis waits 12 days for Zeus to return from a feast, then kneels and begs him to favor the Trojans. Zeus gives a world-shaking nod of agreement, but almost instantly his wife Hera grows jealous and accuses him of sneaking behind her back. It gets so incredibly tense that Hephaestus, the lame god of the forge, has to step in. He breaks the tension with some awkward physical comedy, pouring nectar for everyone until the gods are just busting up laughing. The contrast is absolutely brilliant. Because the gods are immortal, their conflicts are ultimately petty and consequence-free. They can argue, threaten each other, and then just laugh it off over drinks and sleep peacefully. But for the mortals down on Earth, their fragile, fleeting lives make this exact same kind of pride incredibly deadly. Finally, Section 6. Why Book 1 matters. Let's move to see how this all builds, tracing that ultimate domino effect. Step 1. Agamemnon's stubborn pride and refusal to compromise his status. Step 2. The public humiliation of Achilles, leading to his bitter withdrawal from the battlefield. And Step 3. Zeus's cosmic promise to punish the Greeks for that exact insult. A single moment of workplace stubbornness has escalated into absolute cosmic warfare. This opening chapter isn't just an introduction, it is the foundational engine for everything that follows. Which leaves us with a final provocative thought. If the fate of an entire army rests on the fragile ego of one man, who is the true enemy? Is it the Trojans across the battlefield, or is it the destructive power of personal pride within our own ranks? It's a terrifying lesson on leadership, manipulation, and honor that still resonates over 3,000 years later. Thank you for joining me in this explainer, and I hope it leaves you wanting to explore the rest of the Iliad for yourself.